Charity and NGOs Week, and to indeed Careers in International Development and Disaster Relief. Did anybody here attend last night's event? Yeah, quite a few. Excellent, great panel, eh? Excellent. Okay, so I'd just like to introduce you to our panel for tonight, and begin with an apology, I'm afraid. Colin Rogers is unable to attend from Plan International. He was called out at short notice to Abuja, Nigeria, for their latest humanitarian crisis there, and has been held up at immigration, quite topical at the moment. So, yeah, apologies from him. However, Colin did attend last year, representing Care International, and there is an audio recording on the UCL Careers website. So if you want to access that, please do find that on there. Okay, so tonight we're joined by Matthew Lloyd Cape from Islamic Relief, who's a Global Programs Director. Coordinator. We have Sarah Pickwick from World Vision, who is a Senior Conflict Advisor. And we have Hannah Haynes from Save the Children UK, who is a Consortium Coordinator. And I'll leave Hannah to describe to you what that is. Okay, so can I begin with, there will be an opportunity, of course, to ask questions at the end. So each speaker is going to speak for perhaps 6, 7, 8 minutes or so. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. And hopefully my voice will hold out to the end of this session. Okay, can I invite Matt to begin proceedings, please? Matt.
Good evening. Is this working, my friend? Okay, so yes, I'm Matthew Lloyd Cape. I work at Islamic Relief as a Global Programs Coordinator. Just to give you some context, Islamic Relief is the biggest Islamic faith-based charity in the UK. And we deliver aid to people in need, regardless of faith and creed. Our annual turnover is around £100 million, mostly spent in the humanitarian sector, and maybe a third or so in development projects. We work in around 30 different countries around the world and have 8 partner offices which generate revenue. So I work in one of the partner offices, which is IR UK, Islamic Relief UK. And I have probably the least glamorous of all the jobs out of the three of us, in that I don't travel the world incessantly doing exotic things. I'm a bit more boring that I look after the projects from the point of view of the donor. So I'll try and make sure that the project money is spent well. I'll look at the budgets and look at the reports that come in and try and ensure that the projects are delivered on time and so on. The projects will range from anything from humanitarian relief in Nepal, delivering shelter equipment or food aid in Myanmar, through to gender-based violence projects in East Africa, or livelihoods projects to encourage income generation. So in terms of my personal journey getting to where I am today, I did my undergrad degree in development at University of East Anglia. It's a big development school there. And then in between my second and third year, I got the opportunity to go to Papua New Guinea with voluntary service overseas as a researcher. They needed a researcher to spend a year analysing their education projects, trying to improve the effectiveness of the education projects they had out there. And so that's my first step into field work. Following that, I came back, finished my undergrad degree, and then actually I spent the next 3 years doing carpentry in Bristol, so completely left the field entirely. But it was another passion that I wanted to follow up, so I did that for 3 years. Following that, a friend who had a small NGO based in Malawi wanted somebody to go and oversee a construction project of their facilities. So it's just a really good fit that I'd done development studies and construction work before. So I went to work in Malawi for a year, and that was a great experience to live. We were talking about living in remote places, and there was no running water, no electricity. It was a really good introduction to the actual lives of a lot of people in and around the world, to see the the day-to-day lives of people lead. Then I came back and did a master's at SOAS, worked for a couple of NGOs here in London, and then I started, I got the offer of a PhD funded place in Budapest. And then I kind of screwed off the development track again and started working on workers' rights issues in Eastern Europe. And I'll come back to the PhD because it's a kind of cautionary tale that I have for you about doing funded PhDs. Then I took a year out to look after my son when he was born, and then I got a job at Islamic Relief, so that's kind of the trajectory of how I got here. Opportunities at my organisation, we have a small programs team. We're very much trying to limit overheads, as all NGOs do, but maybe a little bit more than is necessary. So it's very, very stringent on the staffing, but we do have internships both at the global headquarters in Birmingham and at the London office as well. They're kind of on an ad hoc basis, and you can check the websites for those. To make an impact, sure. Well, maybe I'll just move on to the next bit, which is how to go about getting experience in the NGO sector. It's competitive and it's maybe a little more concepts out there. I found, so from my personal experience, small NGOs might give you an option to get a broader range of experiences than you might otherwise. You might fail to get with bigger NGOs, so don't be dazzled by the name. You don't always have to go for Oxfams to make an impact or to get on the ladder. Sometimes you find some remote, we were talking about both of the same experience, you find a remote NGO that needs some assistance maybe on fundraising or building up their capacity to do a project, whatever it is, and you might find that you have really great experience of working with multiple roles in multiple parts of the organisation. Getting field experience, there are lots of ways. So you can sometimes just find small NGOs in your travels, or you've heard about them from friends, or you find them on the internet. I did the volunteering year in Papua New Guinea, which was a great experience through VSO, and they still have some youth programs. So for people that are interested in the sector, it's quite a good way to get in. You can spend a year getting some experience there. Internships, unfortunately, are not anywhere regulated, and there is a problem out there with internships of slave labour, and the NGO sector's equally guilty of taking advantage of it as everybody else. Until it's resolved, it is a stepping stone in, but try and make sure if you do an internship that it's structured, that you have clear goals, that you're going to have something set, some sort of achievable targets to work towards. And then languages are always useful. Arabic, especially in the humanitarian sector, Spanish, it depends on your region, French for West Africa. So there's a few tips. So it's probably sorry, cautionary tale. So I was offered a fully funded PhD in Budapest in Eastern European industrial relations, which the PhD didn't start like that. It was kind of come and study political science, we'll fully fund you, and I started with a development studies concept, which kind of got gradually drifted more and more towards my supervisor's interests, and there was no way of pulling back. So I ended up, I had a baby in the second year of the PhD, and then the whole thing kind of unraveled because my passion wasn't quite there. So if there's ever a question of should I do this one that I'm not so interested in, but it's funded, or my advice is PhDs are less and less valuable these days. Experience is more and more valuable. So unless it's exactly the thing you want to do, don't spend 3 years of your life slamming your head against the brick wall. So
Great advice. Thanks, Matt. Sarah Pickwick.
Just hold this here on the 20-foot address. So thanks for inviting me. So my name is Sarah, and I work for World Vision as their senior conflict advisor, and obviously, for those of you who don't know World Vision, so we're an international children's charity, so we work both similar to Islamic Relief on the development side, but we also do the relief. We're the world's largest children's charity, so I think globally we work in 100 countries. We have 45,000 staff. So World Vision UK, which is the support office that I work for here. So my role here is a lot of what we say advocacy or influencing. So that I have a set of countries that I look after, which are in conflict. So that's Somalia, Congo, Central African Republic, the DRC. And my role from a day-to-day basis varies drastically, just speaking today what I got up to. And it's essentially that we have officers in those countries who will be telling us from their field experience what are some of the key issues and things that need to get changed on the ground. They'll be setting that information up, and it's our job as advocacy people to take those issues and those messages and the voice of the children into decision makers, so whether that's MPs in Parliament, whether that's the Department of International Development, the Foreign Office, the Ministry of Defence, or whether it's equally just talking with our peers, NGOs, or talking to the media, doing radio interviews. It's a whole range of stuff to get those issues up the agenda of the people that make decisions. And that's really interesting. And then there are a lot of different debates going on. The debates around refugees, for example, is a massive one where we would feed in examples from what we see is happening on the ground, the concerns of families, of children, and try and feed into the global debates where we can see we can have input and we want to raise certain issues. So it's not just country specific for me, but it's also thematic. And there are lots of different debates going on that we work with fellow agencies like, say, like Vision and Islamic Relief, where we all work together in trying to get things up the agenda. But that's only really half of my role, because the other half as a senior conflict advisor is what I'd say is programmatic advice. So we work in a lot of different countries, but in those countries where we work where there's conflict, I get the real privilege of being able to walk alongside our officers to really help them to grapple with, and to really understand these contexts that we're in. They are incredibly complex. These conflicts have been going on for a long time. And we have to be very careful as agencies that when we go in, that we don't make things worse. We will inevitably have an impact with the aid that we bring. As to how do we understand the dynamics of attention, the key actors, players, resources, what's going on, and then how do we fit into that, and how do we make sure that the projects that we do don't cause any harm, but even better, how do we go one step further and make sure that they do some good. So actually, we try and allow our staff a bit of headspace to think that through, because when you're in emergency response in some of these settings, it's very, very busy, it's very, very stressful, it's full on, and people often don't have a lot of time to think and breathe and think these things through. So my role is I go out into a lot of these different contexts. I run workshops with our teams for them to have some headspace to think these things through. And next week, for example, I'm off to Sri Lanka to do an analysis with our team in the north, where there was conflict. But other offices I've been into, I was in Congo last year, Afghanistan, and previously did one in Pakistan and Burundi as well. So it's a whole range of countries that I get to travel to, as well as the countries that I do policy work. So I think this is one of the sort of things I would link to if you're thinking about a career in this area, is to really look at what you're passionate about and really what's the key areas that you're interested in. For me, from the day of when I started in my undergrad and master's, issues around conflict and international peace and security were always the thing I was interested in. And it's the thing that I cultivated through my master's, which then led through in my career to the job that I'm in today. So find the area that you're interested in. And I hear so many people saying, I'm just interested in getting a job in international development. And I would say, well, what within that is it? Is it gender? Is it children? Is it water and sanitation? What is it? Is it conflict areas? And then the more that you hone that in, the more that if you speak with other NGOs, if you network, that you can actually find areas where you might be able to get experience. So my personal journey was that, as I said, I didn't study international development, I studied history at LSE, and then I did a master's at King's College in international peace and security. But then I got an internship, and that was basically my leg into the door, and I then got my first job working for a very small charity called Malaria Consortium as their advocacy officer, and really cultivating that skill set, particularly in advocacy. I then moved on to working for an NGO Fund, again doing advocacy on Sudan and on South Sudan and in DRC. And then that's 4 years after that, I moved to my job currently with World Vision, where I've been 3 years. So I think everybody's journey is very, very different, but I would echo the point of a lot of employers are looking for your entry-level jobs. They are looking for experience, and I know that it's the classic conundrum that I had when I wanted a job in this area of, if you want experience, I don't have it, but you need to give me the experience for you also to grow. And it was this sort of clash that was really hard, and I think that sometimes you just have to, given the industry is what it is, you have to just build up that experience through multiple internships, whether it's volunteering on your holidays, whether it's doing internships whilst you're doing your degree, whatever way you can, collect up that experience so that it amounts to a decent chunk, and then that will stand out miles in your CV. And especially if it can be overseas, I think that counts a million for that. But I think the other key thing that I would just say in terms of advice is network, network, network. Get out there. Go and meet with people from NGOs. I mean, you've got people like us coming now, but the kind of events that we'll go to, we're at events that say the Overseas Development Institute, Chatham House. These are the events that we will go to maybe as NGOs where we'll network. Go to those events, meet with people, find out what they're working with, cultivate those relationships, not just to then go up and ask, can I have an internship and a job, but actually if you take a real interest in the types of things that we're grappling with and we're working with, there may be ways that we can craft out opportunities. And it kind of leads to the point where it says, are there any opportunities in my organisation? Because the formal answer is no, but actually over the last year and a half, we have been able to work with 2 or 3 graduates who actually, through projects they were doing or dissertations, where they were asking to interview us or whatever, and they came, and because they asked really interesting questions or they were interested in things we were doing, we were like, okay, you're proactive, you're interested in what we're doing, you're asking the right questions, yeah, maybe we've got this project going on, maybe you can come and work with us. And actually, one of the people 2 years ago that we had did that, ended up ultimately down the line getting a job with World Vision, and then after 7 years at World Vision went on to work with the UN. So it is possible, but these things happen informally through networking, and you have to be proactive, you have to follow up, you have to get business cards, ask to go out for coffee, whatever it takes, but don't give up at the first hurdle as well if you don't get an answer, because I think we've all been there, and if you ask and if you are interested, then hopefully there can be some space. And then I think just the other advice is just make sure you cultivate a wide range of skill sets. I said about finding your passion thematically, but remember that the international development sector is a wide range of skills. It's IT, it's fundraising, it's communications, it's advocacy, it's writing research, it's that project management. So what is it that you actually like doing on a day-to-day basis? And if you can kind of figure that out as well as your passion, then you can possibly, that helps you when you're looking for roles of what you might return for or what you might want to do a job for. Because otherwise, if you're just looking very broadly for a job in international development, I think it would look a bit overwhelming to start with. So yeah, it's just...
That's great. Thanks, Sierra. And finally, Heather Haynes from Save the Children.
Hi, yeah. I'm only a little bit older than quite a lot of you, so I'm quite new to the sector. So, so I work as I said, in an odd-sounding job. I'm a consortium coordinator, and then the word officer is tagged onto that because Save the Children loves ridiculous job titles. But what that means essentially is that I work on one particular project within Save the Children, which is quite unusual because most people tend to work in a sector, for example. And the project I work on is a consortium, which is essentially so it's a group of organisations who have got together for the purpose. For the purpose of increasing the use of multi-purpose cash in the sector. So some of you might have heard that cash is increasingly the way that we deliver aid. Rather than giving people stuff, we give them cash. And multi-purpose cash is kind of at the liberal end of that, and we give people cash and with no strings attached, essentially. We work out how much cash they probably need and then we give them that. But unfortunately, in the moment in the sector, it isn't very well organised, it's certainly not well coordinated. There are about 500 tools to do it, none of which match up together. So what the aim of this consortium is to kind of coordinate the way that we do this for efficiency purposes and just to really help the most people we can in the most effective way. So the consortium is between Save the Children and Mercy Corps and Danish Refugee Council and CALP, who are the Cash Learning Partnership, and UN OCHA, the Organisation for Coordination for Humanitarian Affairs. And so that's our partnership, and this is a project that's running for 2 years, and I'm just the coordinator, which essentially means I make sure stuff gets done. I've got the technical expert on the team, I've got some different technical experts from those various organisations, but I do the day-to-day management and quite a lot of admin stuff, but also kind of, because my background is in communications, I do a lot of the kind of the writing of various documents and liaising with all the different partners. So in terms of how I got here, I would say I wanted to work, I know you just said it sounds vague to say you wanted to work in international development, but I did want to work in international development in a vague kind of way since I was quite young. So between college and university, I did sort of a gap year thing in Ghana, where I taught for 5 months, and I would say, as just potentially cautionary tale, that whilst that was fun for me, looking back at it, I'm not sure what it gave to the people, I was actually working with. So, when you're looking at internships, which I definitely advocate you do, really think about what you're actually doing, how serious the internship is that you're doing, because, I had a great time, took great photos, got a tan, met some amazing people, but, actually the project wasn't very well run, so there wasn't that much capacity for me to do anything productive in kind of a long-term sustainable manner. So after that, I went to university and I did Peace and Development Studies at Bradford, and they have a great development department, really good masters if any of you are looking. And then after that, I essentially was looking around for internships to do, and I'd done quite a lot of volunteer work while at university, so I worked for Peace Jam, which is an organisation that joins up Nobel Prize laureates with young students who are young people in the area who are at risk of kind of dropping out. So that's a really inspirational project. So even while I was at university, I was trying to get a lot of kind of experience with different NGOs, and I don't think it matters really what NGO you go for. If even if nobody else has heard of it, it doesn't matter. I think just getting experience is good. And so after university, I looked essentially for big NGOs, the big names, but they don't offer internships for people who don't have any experience. So I worked for smaller NGOs, and I ended up working for a small NGO in London called Global Giving, which is a massive organisation in the States you might know about. The UK branch is quite small. And I worked in their office doing communications, and then, but I essentially went in with the attitude, I can do whatever you like, what do you need? And they said, well, what are your skills? And I said, well, I don't really have any specific skills, but I'm quite good at writing, I can, that sort of thing, so communications. And then after that, I moved on to another small NGO because I was looking to go into the field. And like these guys have said, field experience is really valuable. Every time I spoke to anybody, they said, but have you got any field experience? I said, well, yes, I've done this kind of gap year thing, but that's not, people don't take that as serious experience. So I found this small NGO, and I ended up going to Madagascar, where I lived for 10 months, and I worked on a development project. Even though humanitarianism is more my area, I thought it's better to get out there into the field, and actually if you start in a field context that's maybe less extreme, that would be, I would kind of test myself to see, because I think it's really important that you might have this idea in your head that you want to go and work in the field, but I think a lot of people, when they go and realise there's no electricity, there's no water, you will get malaria probably if you go to a malaria area, maybe you can't deal with that, and that's fine. And if that's the way you are, but you just need to be aware in yourself and be able to prove to others that you can do this. And of course, that doesn't mean you can't work in the charity sector if you decide you can't work in the field, because there are huge numbers of HQ kind of jobs right here in London, so you don't have to go anywhere. But just make sure you know, I would say, definitely. So I worked for this small charity. And then I saw advertised the internship that Save the Children runs, and I applied for that, and I got it. So I did that internship, and then I did that internship was in communications at Save the Children, and after a while I realised I don't actually want to be in communications, but I love Save the Children, and I love some of the work it does. So, and I knew I wanted to be in food security, which is kind of where I've been going ever since my degree, anyway. And so I essentially just talked to my line manager and said, can you put me in touch with the person who's in charge of food security? And they said, sure. And I got her email address, and I emailed her and said, this is what I can offer. Do you have anything for me to do? And she said, yes. And she essentially designed a job for me to do temporarily, and then an actual real job came up in the department. Pretty much, in fact, on my first day of starting that job, they said, there's this new job, do you want to apply for it? So I think there's an advantage to big organisations in that once you're in The networking possibilities within your organisation are huge, because I literally just emailed somebody out of the blue and they took me seriously. But on the other hand, small organisations are great for actually getting you out to the field and doing stuff immediately. So I would say in terms of opportunities with the organisation, let's say for children, unfortunately at the moment the training scheme is not running. Well, it is running, but there's no new applications happening this year, and that's due to funding reasons. That's not a decision to not run it ever again in the future. So if you're still in kind of your first, second year, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I would check back regularly throughout the years, because there isn't really a regular time at which they advertise those internships. However, if you are West African, the West African training scheme is still running, so I don't know if that applies to any of you. If it does, maybe come talk to me afterwards and I'll give you some more details, because it's in French and you have to be West African to qualify, so it probably doesn't apply to 99%. Making a judgment about where you're from. You can volunteer at Save the Children. That's available through the website. You just look it up. Just Google Save the Children. And they have volunteering opportunities. Most of them are in the shops, however. But if you send them an email saying what you've got, they might be able to put you in touch with the relevant teams. I would say advice on getting work or making impact is the same as what these guys have said, really. I think get field experience, know what you want to do, but also be willing to not do that directly, because even though several of the jobs I've done aren't specifically what I want to do, I've been able to learn an awful lot about how the organisation works and what it actually means to be part of these organisations. So I think just doing whatever comes up, but always kind of pushing and reminding your manager that, oh, I'm really interested in that, can I also, do that as well? I would say, and I'm sure you all know this, but I mean, I've worked for free for about 2 years of my life so far in the last couple of years, and you just do. It's not fair. It sucks. But that is how the charity sector operates, and unfortunately, it's going to increasingly operate like that because, well, first of all, because there's reduced funding at the moment across the board, and then secondly, because jobs are more and more going to be but as they should be done by people in the countries where the work is being done. So there are going to be less jobs for international people, particularly at the entry level. Technical experts are always going to be needed, but there's going to be fewer. So it's just going to get, this isn't advice, it's just to let you know it's going to be increasingly tough. So trend on that really negative note. Sorry, you can do it still though. We're all here, so it is possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. That's really got my own mind. Thank you very much. Really. Can I invite questions now from you guys? Does anybody have any questions? Don't be shy. Let's start off in the front here.
Yeah.
And if you could speak up. I usually have an aisle down the middle to run up, but I don't have that, so let's speak up.
Okay. So most of us have had like an academic kind of introduction to the work of charities and the work of NGOs. So we might not know specifically which actors are on the ground. So kind of finding the smaller charities and NGOs to apply for that might give us opportunities might not be so easy. Do you have any advice about like networking sites or anything like that that we can use?
So one thing would be if you were looking thematically at something, if you're into food security or livelihoods, so I'm really into livelihoods side of work. If you're going to join a forum in...
The mic, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm really into livelihoods side of work, and so I'm on forums. So Bond have a lot of online forums, for example, on monitoring evaluation, and sometimes even jobs come up there, or you just get to know people who are interested in that sort of things. That's one thing that I've found is that the more you're into a specific issue, you might find, I'm into Sri Lankan livelihoods. Boom, there you go. There's a guy who's also into it. You have a little chat on a forum, and then you go to Sri Lanka. Sounds very easy that way, but not quite that simple.
I would just also add on that note, if you are into a particular area, lots of the sectors are organised around, so when we say sectors, it means kind of like shelter and water and sanitation and then hygiene, and water, sanitation, hygiene is one, and then education and then food security and livelihoods. Those are all separate sectors. But a lot of the sectors have, well, they all have cluster coordination mechanisms that coordinate how they work in countries or even at global level, and a lot of those clusters have websites, which at the very least will tell you who is working in those areas in particular countries. And that will include smaller NGOs as well. I mean, it will include the big ones and the various different UN organisations, but it will also include small actors as well. And just in terms of finding out for internships of small charities, you don't actually need to necessarily know the names of them, but I find that the Guardian Jobs website is gold. I think I've used that about 3 times. It's got jobs up that 3 times. And I would also say, this is not a word, but Facebook is really good because a lot of people you know will probably like various different charities, and that's at least a good starting point for you to go and find out about them.
Absolutely.
And just also to add, obviously, I totally agree on the thematic thing, but there are also country-specific groups. So if there is a particular country that you have an interest, there are also places you can go. Bond is a great thing because, I mean, all the members of Bond, that's probably, what, 300 British NGOs are all listed, and they range across all different kind of sizes. Connecting in with groups, for example, there's lots of interest groups in the UK Parliament. They're all publicly available on the website, and you can see different local, sort of more community grassroots networks from that. Social media, I think, is also a gem. Not just Facebook, but look on Twitter. There's lots of different groupings. Follow people on LinkedIn. Go to all of these things because often there's lots of interest groups that you can sign up, see what are the debates. Guardian development, there's often lots of forums and discussions, and sometimes, a lot of times, local communities will post as groups, and you can see who's interested in what debate, and that you can potentially sort of link in with that as well.
Sorry, just
Yeah, go ahead.
just thought something. So I was talking earlier about one of the Vision and Islamic Consortium, which is the Cash Learning Partnership, CALP, and if you are interested in cash, which most of you will be into living in cash in the future, they have a really good thing called the D groups, the discussion groups, and anybody can join that. You just need to sign up with an email address, and you can hear all the conversations that are going on, which is a great way of kind of keeping up to date with the debates, and also seeing who's doing what.
Brilliant. Thank you. There's another question just behind. Yes.
I don't necessarily study anything related to development or disaster relief, so I was wondering to what extent is that a disadvantage when trying to apply for entry-level jobs?
What do you study?
Archaeology and anthropology.
Grand anthropology. If I would say I don't personally think most people I work. I mean, I happen to have a degree in development studies, but I think most people I work with don't have degrees in what they're working in. I mean, and also the technical sectors, like people will have, the education specialists have backgrounds in education, and the shelter specialists are architects or structural engineers, and so even if you're not, there's always a way in. And actually, once you've got a few things under your belt, I think your academic qualifications, I mean, they're important, you have to have them, but what they were in isn't necessarily as important as what you learn afterwards and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, and specifically anthropology, your social research methods will be valuable. You know, you probably studied, Malinowski and all, these classical studies of the other. But, obviously modern anthropology is very useful for understanding how cash grants work, or how to overcome inequality of food given to girls and boys, or whatever it is, so you need anthropology. The sector doesn't exist without anthropology, so you're right.
The rest of you are probably fine too.
How many people are doing development studies at the moment? Just out of curiosity.
Right. Okay. Do we have any questions over perhaps this side? Yes, right at the back there.
I want to ask a question as a graduate. I think there's this real fear from graduates. I mean, when I was at university here, I worked for Amnesty and Refugee Action relevance and your sort of opposite experience. What I'm trying to say is, so if you do work like retail or something at the moment, how relevant is it to include that in your application? Because I think I don't always, so I'm meant to emphasize I have NGO experience, but because that's like from 2015 to 2016, you're kind of scared about, oh, that's not the past now. So should you include things that aren't necessarily NGO related, like maybe retail? Maybe it is helpful to say that you've done it, so you can show that you've got communication and everything. But basically, how relevant is it to include stuff that's not necessarily relevant to NGOs?
I think definitely it's completely relevant in terms of, I think, often now a lot of the interview questions when I've gone for jobs have actually been more around, give us examples, not necessarily from the NGO sector, of how you've done problem solving or how you managed an issue where there was conflict between colleagues or something. You know, and it's kind of, if you can prove that you've got examples of where you've done that, like how did you manage a difficult situation? How did you deal with maybe colleagues that were cross-cultural in this situation? You know, things where actually you get that experience equally from working in retail as much as you would in an NGO. Those experiences, I mean, people just want to see that you're thinking it through. And a lot of the time, I know in a lot of jobs I've applied for, sometimes I haven't actually met the criteria exactly in terms of experience. But actually, sometimes you've had NGOs that are willing to take a chance on you in terms of you can sit there and argue your case that actually I've got the ability to maybe think things through, and you know that sometimes the content and it was something you can learn. And so it's often about the skills that you can prove that you have, which you can pick up in a range of sectors. And it kind of comes back to what you made again, that there are so many skills broader than just the NGO sector that you can, skills that proving that you're good and fluent in IT, in communications, in have you done any fundraising, marketing, and you can pick those up in all types of sectors. So I think don't ever belittle any of that and keep on plugging away. I know it is hard, and I know that I very much sympathise with your sort of where you work, because I remember when I finished my masters, I initially really wanted more of a sort of like think tanky or like job more in the sort of international relations sector, and I was pressing all these doors and not getting any responses. And actually, in the end, followed a slightly different path to begin with, in terms of it was an NGO into advocacy. But actually, it was just more as, how do I say, it's sometimes you have to do a few jobs and go down different paths that maybe you didn't originally plan, but it's collecting all of those skills and just arguing your case one more time and again, and eventually, and hopefully, the right door will open.
Yeah, just quickly. So I had a similar experience after my masters. I've been interning while I was doing my masters for Consumers International, which is a consumer rights / responsible consumerism kind of organisation. And we were doing research on how supermarkets treat their suppliers in developing countries, and then there was a lobbying and a campaign edge to it as well. And it was really, it was awesome, and I got to go to Costa Rica with these Brazilian filmmakers and do a short film. And then, I had 6 months work after my masters on that project, and then that was it. And then it was the financial crisis, and no one was hiring, and it was horrible. And I didn't get a job for a long time after that. But you just have to keep plugging away. And project management skills, you get that in any sector. And project management, that's a really strong set of skills to have. There's a specific course called PMB Pro, which you might be able to do free here. I'm not sure. There's a lot of organisations that are free in the NGO sector, and it's a good little thing to put on your CV. PMB Pro, project management for development professionals.
Yeah, it's a really good course. I don't think it's available free here. I don't know if anybody here knows, but it's an accredited course. It's part of the APMG group, I believe, in project management. And I think it's the first level. The first level is free, and then there's various other levels, increasing advancement, I suppose, in that. But it's a very, very good course, and it's a course I've done myself. It's a brilliant course. Okay, does anybody else have anything else to add? Or more questions? Okay, can I take one here, and I'll go up there later.
Hiya. So I'm currently doing my master's right now, and I just wanted to understand how necessarily understand the kind of transition work between sort of like straight academia to just real NGO sector work. I worked in a patient organisation for a bit, which was my undergrad and masters, and it was very, very different. So I just wonder, in terms of how you kind of take what you've learned in your master's level and bring it to the sector, while still understanding that it's obviously not going to be the same.
It's less intellectually stimulating. In the world of work, there's a lot more admin. Yeah, so I work on projects in 13 countries across Asia and East Africa, and half the time I'm reading reports and I forget which country it's from, but that's so dull after a while. I'm exaggerating, but there's a lot of tedium. But then you get really exciting bits as well. You know, you sign off that project that you really want to do. There's a lot, I don't know. Have you got anything better?
I guess it depends, because I mean, when I went from my master's into organisation, I went into sort of, as I said, an advocacy role.
I was just going to say that some of our most exciting work at the moment is on crossover between two sectors. So climate resilient agriculture is a massive area that we're trying to get more projects funded for, and also to get the other organisations interested. So we've been working with Bangladeshi government to get them to take on some of the lessons that we've learned about saline-resistant wheat and various other crops for us. And that's it's going to be a growth. It's going to be the growth sector. You know, climate mitigation in livelihoods. As far as conflict goes, as well, as far as I know, you know, conflict is increasingly driven by climate-related events. So East Africa being an example. Yeah, so it's a technical specialism. You should. I don't know if you're doing a master's or yeah. So I don't know if you picked your thesis topic, but if you were interested in trying to sort of shortcut into the NGO sector and something on climate resilient seeds, and then you might even come talk to me actually if you want, and talk about going to the field to collect some data, or whatever. There's definitely options, and NGOs are open for learning on their work, because we can't afford to do as much M&E as we'd like, monitoring evaluation as we'd like. So that's definitely an option. You can self-fund the trip to Bangladesh, maybe we can do some work there.
Great. Okay, we probably have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Okay, we'll go to this side. Just, yes.
For example, I worked in 2 NGOs, but it was more by health background, so it was more social behavior change communication. And I wanted to ask, for example, if I want to, not to shift exactly, but then like, to sort of move into the conflict side, do I have an advantage over people who have never worked at NGOs, or am I at a less advantage because some people have studied conflict resolution in university?
I think your background in health will be really valuable. I mean, it's one of the biggest issues in conflict settings in terms of mortality, particularly maternal mortality and child mortality as well. So I mean, I think it sets you up very, very well. I think people bring lots of different backgrounds when working in conflict, because there's the whole remit of the people that want to work on conflict in terms of conflict prevention, conflict resolution, peace building, and then there's everyone that works in the conflict settings in terms of the response, where it's more provision of basic services in your sort of more classic relief. So there's different types of NGOs, because you have a lot of NGOs that are peace building specialists, conflict resolution specialists, and so studying in that background may be that you're moving towards that, but then if it's more that you're interested in the health background, then the NGOs that will do your relief and their emergency responses will probably be a good fit for you.
Okay, so just over here, go to your hand, and then we'll go to the middle there. Okay, yes, please.
Yes, hi guys. My question is related to her question. I'm from Chile, and at the moment I'm doing a master's in education, gender and international development at the IOE. And my background is in education in Chile, in education and psychology, so I do have experience working at university, charities, international development scene, or if I need to start in an internship, because I already have experience in Chile, which is a developing country, but I don't know how much does it count not having the experience in the international NGO. So I don't know, what do you think in terms of, is it better to start with an internship or just go straight for the jobs? How would you do?
Apply for jobs. Even if you don't think you're fully qualified, I think you said earlier, you know, you don't always have to have everything on the checklist, because sometimes there won't be anybody with everything on the checklist. It can't hurt to apply for jobs, you know, it's like sort of half an hour to put a job application together. Just apply for everything. And some of those things might be paying jobs, and some of them might be internships. So there's no harm in applying for something you don't get. The worst that can happen is you don't get a response. So,
Which can be really disheartening.
yeah.
An hour on that.
Let's try an application.
Say no thanks.
Right, anybody else got anything else to add? No? Okay. Yeah, in here first, and then we'll go to the front. Yes.
Hi, thanks very much for all your advice so far. For those of us who are looking at building up a professional background in an area that isn't necessarily directly related to NGO work, so something like healthcare or education, and so will be based sort of in the UK kind of working full time for a number of years, how do you recommend balancing that kind of professional development with internships or applying for jobs in NGOs? Would it differ to some of the other advice you've given?
I can give you some. I mean, I think it definitely translates over. So I've got a friend who trained up as a doctor and is now making regular trips out to South Sudan and has basically transferred over into an NGO with those technical skills. So that transferability is definitely possible. And I think what I know she did and what a lot of others is just more to that they continue to cultivate that interest outside of work in the sector in terms of networking, coming back to networking again, but you know, just interest, wider reading, you know, following debates, trends, knowing what's going on out there, and the sort of specific interest, so that when the time came, if you did want to make that switch, you know sort of what exactly it is, you know, whether it's a particular country or a particular type of healthcare or education, because there are some that, like an ESO, I guess, that maybe you could transfer directly over, others where it might be that your role would be you could go to more of a technical advisor. So I know a lot of people in World Vision, former background is they're lawyers, and they've gone into advocacy work in terms of that's been a natural fit. Others have gone into program advice in health, and their former background was that they were a nurse. So I think that they're well set up to advise on that. They may need to get other qualifications, it will depend on the JD, but definitely.
Yeah, I think most professions have, they also have their own little NGO arm as well. So aside from the VSO type organisations which will take professionals at pretty much any stage of their career actually, you know, from, I'm not sure if they still take recent graduates in education, but they used to take, you know, first people that just finished their education degrees, and then they had all the way up to teacher trainers, you know, top level. But also, if you're in professions, there are, for lawyers, for anesthesiologists, there's often a small NGO for that sector where they share skills in other countries. And yeah, I've got a friend who's just got a job for the anesthesiologists NGO, which I can't remember the name of, but so yeah, she goes around the world setting up projects to share information from highly trained people in that field to upskill people in other countries. So yeah, it's definitely loads of places.
Great.
I'm afraid I'm going to take one more question, but Hannah and Sarah can stay. You can stay for a little while. I said I'd go to the front. Yeah, okay. Has anybody got a burning question? What have you? Yes, okay, over there.
What importance would you put on language? Is it is it an important skill to kind of prioritise, or is it not so important? Like, how much would you say, yeah, like having other languages?
Not so important. I don't know. For me, not so important.
I guess for me, I'd actually say it's my biggest regret that I didn't study it more. It's incredibly important in my life. So, I mean, it really depends, I think, on the sector, because obviously two of my countries are French-speaking. So it depends on, I guess, where you're working and what you're doing it in. So a lot of our grants proposals, if they're working with those countries, they need to be able to read our proposals in French. Or if we're going out there to do languages, it is not helpful if we can't understand the language. So I think it will depend, because, I mean, at the same time, a lot of the conflicts that I work on are all in East Africa. So a lot of, English is the main language there, that's less of an issue. But I think if you've got the opportunity, I would say study it now while you can, because you never know how it will, how it will become useful later. But I think, yeah, back in point there, it really does depend on the role that you will be looking for, because if you're looking for roles more in HQ where you're not so keen to do so much travelling, then maybe it's not so relevant. It'll depend.
Yeah, I would just add it also depends on what country you want to go to, because some countries you have very specific languages. Like when I was in Madagascar, I learned a bit of Malagasy, but it's completely useless outside of Madagascar, because unless I happen to bump into a Madagascar person, I really hope none of you are now. I said I've known some Malagasy. So if you're learning kind of a broad language, I think that can help, like French, Arabic, really great, Spanish. But if you already know exactly where you want to work, investing in that language, if you're going to a country like Madagascar where the vast majority of people don't speak anything apart from Malagasy, you literally cannot communicate with people, then it's more important. But unless you know already and you absolutely determined, that's a big investment to make in one language that's so useful.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to that's the end of questions for the moment. The guys will be staying for a few minutes, maybe talk, 20 minutes or so afterwards if you have any questions for them. Can I just ask if anybody's registered for the Thursday networking event, which we've heard is very important? Yeah? Yeah, I think we have sort of, 10, 15 or so NGOs and charities visitors on Thursday evening, so from 5 o'clock. So if you haven't registered, please do feel free to do that. Can I send by the opportunity to thank the panel, please? Thank you much. You may go unless you want to stay for a while.